Mr. Del Castillo, can we start with the roll call, please?
Yes. Good morning.
Testing.
You can just keep the volume up, please.
Okay, good morning. Roll call, Chair Hampton,
Present.
Vice Chair Blair,
Present.
Ms. Popkin, Ms. Popkin. Okay. Mr. Bering,
I think he's having trouble logging in. We'll circle back.
Mr. Hall. Here. Mr. Reeves.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Ms. Bagley
Here.
and Mr. McGregor.
Here.
Thank you. We got
Thank-
quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Del Castillo. We have a quorum. I'd also like to acknowledge that Commissioners Kingston and Stannard are present with us. So good morning. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We want to make a few announcements as we begin our meeting. There is one item on today's agenda, and we have a number of registered public speakers. We have another meeting scheduled in this location at 10:30 a.m., so we will have limited time today. Our goal is to hear from all of our speakers, and we would like to make sure that you all have an opportunity to speak before us, but we will have a hard stop at 10:30 a.m. To maximize our time, staff briefing will provide an update from our last meeting, including responses to questions from our members, and also allow maximum time for our speakers. If there's no objections, it is recommended that our committee limit our discussion time to allow for our speakers. Any speakers that we do not hear from today will be automatically carried over to our next meeting. We're also going to reorder our agenda to do our minutes at the beginning so that we don't run out of time. Are there any objections to reordering of the agenda? Any objections? Hearing none, we will proceed. We'd like to also acknowledge that Commissioner Rubin is with us in the chamber. So as a reminder, our meeting format begins with staff briefing, questions from our members and any commissioners, followed by our public speakers. Speakers will be limited to 1 minute. Please also remember to begin with your name and address. For any of our speakers joining us virtually, we will need to have your camera on to be able to hear from you today. I'd also like to acknowledge the letters that we have received. Those have been shared with all committee members. And our code amendment website is now also up and includes our case report, staff reports, prior council briefings, and additional resources as requested by this committee. With that, is there a motion regarding our minutes?
I'll move.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you, Commissioner Blair, for your second. Those are the approval of the revised minutes as distributed to members this morning. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motions are adopted. With that, we'll move to our discussion item. Ms. Udrea, would you please read the item into the record and begin with your briefing?
Good morning. I'm hoping you can hear me. Let's see. So item D212002 is consideration of amending Chapter 51 and 51A of the Dallas Development Code with consideration given to amending Sections 51.4216 lodging uses and Section 51A 4205 lodging uses to define a new use called short-term rental lodging and related regulations. Oh, I need to share my screen. I have a short presentation with few updates as per the direction given by ZOAC last time for staff. So as I was saying, this request was initiated by the City Plan Commission in December of last year. Just a second. The updates that are included in the staff report and in this presentation briefly are again per ZOAC direction last meeting. Just an announcement, the project website is up and running and it contains information including the memos from the assistant city manager from last year in May. We have responses for ZOAC for the previous direction, and then discussion on provisions for the proposed short-term rental land use. ZOAC previously directed us to look into provisions to regulate environmental performance like light, noise, security. We included in the staff report links and sections of few other chapters of the code that do regulate these type of performance standards. One is Chapter 27 that regulates minimum property standards that applies to all properties and buildings in Dallas. Chapter 30 that regulates noise, again applies to all properties and buildings in Dallas, includes provision for disturbing noises and vibrations, presumed offensive, and a section for loudspeakers and amplifiers. So basically it deals with source and devices that make the noise. Includes location where the noise cannot basically overflow within 150 feet from a premises of a residence, and includes hours and references hours after sunset. There is also Chapter 51A, which is the zoning portion or of the Dallas Code of Ordinances. That includes its Article 6 that regulates environmental performance standards, includes regulations regarding noise and glare. What's interesting is that the standards that are included in Article 6 in Chapter 51A, they set the standards by decibel limit per type of zoning district and hours for different decibel limit allowable. And then glare provisions is a provision about glare that limits lighting to overflow above property lines. It is within the Dallas Development Code, so it can be recommended by this body. For instance, includes definitions and it's a very robust article. For instance, includes a definition for daytime that is from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Therefore, everything that's after sunset refers to after 10 p.m. Definitions for noise disturbance, how to measure sound pressure level average. It includes provisions for noise level adjustments, reference to background noise, and nighttime noise. Another direction that ZOAC asked us last time was to look at provisions to limit short-term rentals in multifamily building and developments, maybe look into similar provision like what is included in mixed-use districts, those being the ones that are basically limiting the type of uses that can be and qualify for a mixed-use project. I included an excerpt from the code in the staff report. For example, in order to qualify for a mixed-use project that triggers additional development standards under an MU district, there are provisions for lodging between 10 and 15% or minimum for residential between 10 and 15%. But again, these are to qualify for mixed-use project. ZOAC also asked us if we can include provisions or if we can recommend provisions to be included to regulate the platforms. We discussed with our attorneys, and these provisions will be included in the registration and regulation ordinance. I also wanted to remind ZOAC that there were few briefings that were interdepartmental done for city council briefing sessions. In those briefings, the code compliance department included these as potential provisions to be included in the registration and regulation ordinance, which is going to be different from Chapter 51 and 51A. Those provisions for the registration and regulation ordinance that are proposed by code compliance and other departments are referring to registration requirements, require STRs to obtain a license, allow for correction of fees, require distance between STRs, and a maximum percentage of dwelling units in a multifamily. a building, notification of neighbors within 300 feet that is to be done by city staff, require owner to have emergency contact information, require all listings on platforms to include the license number, no exception from single-family registration if owner rents for periods greater than 30 days, registration to be renewed annually or at the change of ownership, allow for inspections, annual inspections and night inspections, self-certification program eligibility for good neighbor properties, host owner agent liability for failure to comply or allow registrations, inspections, revocation of license, minimum night stay of not less than 2 days, occupancy limits for from Texas Property Code, include available parking and restrictions on platform listing, encourage the use and noise use of a noise monitoring device, prohibit amplifying sound devices, violations of the Str Ordinance, which would be this one, would be eligible under habitual nuisance property designation to be prosecuted, I understand. Director discretion for suspension or revocation of license, hold the platform accountable for failure to comply with provisions of this chapter, require platforms to provide locations listed, being listed with the City of Dallas, require platform to remove any listing that is not licensed, and require the collection of hot tax and submit remittance. So all of the operation and again, administrative type of operation of the short-term rentals are proposed by other departments, staff to be included in a separate ordinance that will regulate registration and regulation for short-term rentals. For the zoning portion of it, this is just an overview of what we already presented last time, just to remind ourselves this is the zoning portion that again is up for discussion, and anything can be added or not as long as it has a land use rationale. We have a definition. The districts permitted are up for discussion. Requirements for parking and additional provisions. In the additional provisions, there's a provision that is proposed to say that the use must comply with the registration and regulation ordinance. The number of short-term rentals in a single-family dwelling unit may not exceed 1, and a short-term rental cannot be used in any type of commercial amusement inside or any other use that is even like an event or entertainment type of use. As I was saying last time, these are the potential zoning districts. We chose them based on what other lodging uses are allowable in what type of zoning districts. I was looking a little bit closer. I would like for ZOAC to consider these zoning districts and discuss if they are appropriate or not. I created this table. We can talk more about it, but in the interest of time, I will leave it here. This table is part of the presentation. I included the residential uses, if they're allowable or not, in the zoning districts that are tentatively proposed for this use, and then the lodging uses. And again, up for discussion. That was all I had today. I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Udrea. Before we move to questions from the commission, may I just confirm the item before us today is consideration of the zoning amendments to define the short-term rental as a lodging use, consideration of districts, and any other recommendations this body might consider. Is that correct?
Yes, but
then-
that can be suitable for Chapter 51 and 51A.
And because regulations, as you outlined, will be part of a separate chapter.
Yes, that was the intent.
And we had some questions that were sent by the members for the city attorney. Is Mr. Burgess available to maybe answer those?
Hey, good morning. Casey Burgess with the City Attorney's Office.
Good morning, Mr. Burgess. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning.
I know one of the first questions that we had received from the committee was regarding short-term rentals not being defined within the development code and what our authority was in creating a new land use. Are you able to speak to that?
Sure. I mean, that is completely within the city's authority. Yeah. So from time to time, new uses arise, and that requires the development code to be amended, and new uses to be created. So, yeah, that is completely within your purview.
Thank you. And I think there was a follow-up question. We had received some input that there were vested rights with an existing operator. Are you able to speak to that?
In order for a use to be non-conforming, it would have to be an actual existing use. And so this isn't a use in the development code right now, so there wouldn't be any non-conforming rights that would attach to it going forward.
Thank you. There was a separate question that was asked about zoning versus regulation. Can you speak to how those are considered?
Yeah, so the zoning is the land use piece, really where they're allowed, parking requirements, loading requirements, things like that. The regulatory piece that gets into really how the business is run and how the platforms are regulated. So that's really not land use. That's more regulation of the business. So those are two different things.
And I think one of the specific questions that we received was the consideration of the two together, which I think was part of the discussion at City Council. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So if the city wants to do both zoning and regulation, they really need to go to City Council at the same time. That's just really due to some of the litigation that's been out there, and some cities that have done them separately have run into problems.
Thank you. And then two other questions that we had forwarded on were regarding whether or not the hotel occupancy tax could be used to fund enforcement.
No, so that's actually there are very specific things in the Texas tax code that the HOT can be used for, and they all have to be related to hotels and tourism. So yeah, the enforcement could not be part of that.
And then related to that, a registration fee, if that were be considered, and I'm understanding that is outside of Chapter 51A, but is that something that would be anticipated to contribute to enforcement costs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So those were the initial questions that we had submitted on, so I'll open it to the floor. Mr. McGregor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have three narrow questions. I think they're narrow anyway. And they're for Ms. Udrea, I think. The first question is related to the problem that many neighbors have complained about, and it's the issue of the party houses. When you looked at provisions, to the extent that when you looked at the provisions, did you include, or did you guys, has there been any discussion about limiting the number of occupants in any one STR as a way to protect from party housing?
Yes, I think in the registration piece, there is a provision for occupancy limits per number of bedrooms and stuff like that. And then when we did the briefing for council, we also presented a proposal or an intention to do another code amendment to create a separate use for event centers. And it's included, like if you look in the last report for ZOAC, that includes all the three presentations. There is a definition that we were thinking. So that is proposed to be a separate code amendment that will follow this one and will look a little bit broader of entertainment establishments. And then another thing I need to mention is that we did recommend to add into the land use piece under the use, under additional provisions. The last provision is short-term rental must not be used as commercial amusement outside event venue, restaurant, or any other land use located in a zoning district, if it's permitted and if it doesn't have a CO. So there are a lot of nuances that we'll talk about when we're going to come back with the second one.
Okay, thank you. Two more quick ones, if I may. Ms. Udrea, many people who spoke at the last ZOAC meeting were individuals who rent a portion of their house while they live there. And we don't currently have provisions for ADUs, which is, what is it, accessory dwelling units or guest houses. How would, if prohibiting STRs in the couple neighborhoods that right now do not allow lodging, so single family and duplex, I believe, if we prohibit STRs there, how will that affect individuals who want to be able to rent their guest houses?
If the rental is under 30 days, the rental will not be allowed, would
Okay.
be prohibited.
But if it's under 30 days?
Yes.
Right, because it's an STR. All right. Was there any thought given to including a provision for ADUs as part of this change?
All the discussions that we had at City Council, again, are open to the public. We put them on the website, so I'm not swaying in any. There were a few options that were presented to council, and there was one option that made a distinction between owner-occupied and non-owner occupied. And again, I would invite you to listen to the last two City Council briefings on June 1st and June 15th.
Okay, and that's not in the current report, right? Any mention of ADUs?
That's correct. We didn't talk about in this report, it doesn't specifically talk about ADUs. It talks about the new land use and the districts that would be allowed. So if any of the districts, there's a residence there that has an ADU, I need to think about probably, again, if it's allowed, if it's located within one of the districts where this use would be allowed, I think it would be allowed in an ADU.
We might have to come back to ADUs later in the conversation. My last question is, so an important component of staff's recommendation is the idea that the platform owners will cooperate in terms of collecting hotel tax and also in terms of monitoring registration. However, I know from actually friends, some of them are lined up to speak today, that a real problem is certain property owners who are, let's say, investors from California, and they own several properties, and they are neither on, they're not on any of the known platforms. They seem to run their own platform in a limited way. And so when the neighbors have tried to reach out to them and find them, it's impossible. They can't find the listing anywhere. How can those be dealt with outside of the provision, the consideration that you've given to having, say, the VRBOs and Airbnbs help in the process?
I mean, I think that this merits a discussion with code compliance and maybe city controller's office and city attorney. But if what is proposed to be added in the separate registration regulation ordinance doesn't make a distinction between types of platforms. It just says platforms. So I would assume, but I don't want to venture to say that probably we will have a definition for what a platform means, and it doesn't matter if it's something that's more widely used or it's something that is limited use. So, but then as far as enforcement and how city controller's office or code compliance will identify the uses that are not listed on the usual platforms, I would like for the conversation to happen with those departments.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. I'd also like to acknowledge that Commissioner Popkin and Mr. Bering are online with us. Other questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is Mark Reeves.
Mr. Reeves.
Yes, so a question for staff, but the amendment that we're reviewing today is actually council's consensus, right? If they wanted ADUs on here or some of this other language, it would be before us. But what you are proposing or staff's, what we're to discuss is actually council's consensus as the last council consensus, correct?
Again, all the council discussions are online. I would recommend everybody to listen to the June 1st and June 15, or just June 15 meeting. I would just remind everybody that the city council were briefings. So I don't want to venture to pull a straw vote or anything, but the option or what is included in the report was what was discussed, I don't know, more prevalent at the last council meeting, but I wouldn't use the word consensus because it was a council briefing every time.
Okay, but what we had before was under the direction of city council.
Yes, but again, being a briefing, no vote was taken and it cannot be taken, therefore.
Okay, yes, I understand that. So another question really quick. I got two more, hopefully very quick questions. So I do have a detached garage and I have a bedroom and a bathroom above it. I do not rent it out. And I am in single family. So with this, potentially, if we said no STRs in residential, then I would not be able to do a short-term rental in that property. However, I would be able to do it if it was a month-to-month or a 30-day or greater. Is that correct?
This code amendment or this new use applies, per the definition, applies to rentals less than 30 days. So I would assume that that's a different type of rental.
So yeah, okay. So if I had a traveling nurse or I had somebody who was remodeling their kitchen and they were looking for a place to stay in the neighborhood, I could rent them my back house on a month-to-month basis, regardless of whatever we discuss here, correct?
I would assume so, but please do let me, again, I would assume so because that's falls under different chapters.
I'll ask the attorney then, Mr. Burgess.
Yes, you'd be able to as long as it was in compliance with the zoning in the area.
Okay, so single family, I can go 30 days, 30 days, 30 days, 30 days. I could have you in there in my back house. Not that I'd ever want that or allow that, or my wife wouldn't for sure. But you could do that. And then I could go to somebody else for the next month and someone else for the next month, whether it be a traveling, you know, a corporate apartment or something along those lines, correct?
Correct. Yeah, that would not be classified as a short-term rental.
Okay, so I could still make money that way, in other words. Okay, so my last question is on page 2 of the staffing report. The definition of a dwelling unit, I don't know if staff, you can potentially pull that up. So it is the staff report, bottom of the page, page 2. It says a dwelling unit means one or more rooms designed to be a single housekeeping unit to accommodate one family and contain one or more kitchens, one or more bathrooms, and one or more bedrooms. And it says, yes, bottom of page 2, right there at the bottom, dwelling unit. So it says one or more, which could be 2 or 3, and it says one or more bedrooms, so it could be 2 or 3 would be a dwelling unit. And if I look up to section E with the II, whatever you call those things, the number of short-term rentals in a single dwelling unit may not exceed 1. So we're saying short-term rentals in a single dwelling unit, but if I look at the definition of a dwelling unit, it means one or more. So my question is, by what I'm reading here, that reads to me that a short-term rental could be a whole house because we defined a dwelling unit can be one or more bedrooms. So if I had a whole house with 6 bedrooms, what, am I just missing something here?
No, the intent was to basically limit a short-term rental per one dwelling unit. The intent of adding the definition in there is just to show that the short-term rental basically refers to residential use because the dwelling unit is a residential.
So a dwelling unit by this definition could be a whole house.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, that's what I wanted to clarify there. Okay, thank you. That's my last questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Reeves. Mr. Hall, yes, Mr. Hall.
Yeah, Mr. Jack, could you go back to the last slide in your presentation where you were showing the proposed districts? It was up there too short a period of time for me to write down. I just want to grab it real quick. Yes, thank you. Okay.
And Ms. Udrea, this presentation will be posted to the webpage, is that correct?
Yes,
Thank you.
today.
So I'd like to move to our speakers in about 3 minutes. Are there any final questions?
I have a question.
Yes, I hear, is that Mr. Baring?
Mr. Baring.
Yes.
Good morning. Briefly, I just, I want to note that it was mentioned this is both a compliance issue, Chapter 27, and potentially a zoning issue. So I do think even though our scope is limited to zoning, it is worth the consideration of both sides of it. And so on page 3 of the briefing from last meeting, it was mentioned that the code compliance has still in progress, is still working on in progress the registration ordinance, including space limitations, occupancy maximums, things like that. I don't recall seeing that fully built out in our briefing. Is that in our material? Is that fully built out at this point?
No, I think the registration regulation portion is going to follow what the zoning decision or recommendation will be. We can talk more about it. What was brought to council is, again, you'll see in the last report, one of the briefings for council, these are the general type of recommendations for regulation that code compliance and other departments proposed. And the distance and the percentage of units to be used as short-term rentals will depend on the decision today, on the decision on the recommendations for zoning, because that's why I go back to, let's look at the zoning districts where this would be allowed and make a connection to the definition of a short-term rental that is basically a dwelling unit, and see how it would apply, because single-family uses are not allowed in almost any of the districts that are under your consideration. So we will see how the 1,500 feet distance would apply. So let's talk about them together.
Sure. And I guess my comment's just coming from, there are cities that have built out a robust registration system. And, I don't know intimately how effective they are, but I think it's worth consideration. Again, one of the basic questions here to me is this a zoning issue, or is this more, we need to build out a more robust registration and compliance system? So I believe Frisco in my research has done some of this, and I don't know if they can be added to our case report, but yeah, I think just keeping the compliance issue in consideration, even though we are a zoning board, that's a big piece of the regulation here as well. So thank you.
I would like to make a little distinction between the operation and the land use portion. So zoning stays with the land, as opposed to a registration ordinance and regulation that sticks to the operator and is going to be tied to a license, a permit, but it sticks to the operator. And again, it's an annual registration and all other things. But I think the major distinction that we have to keep into our mind is that a land use is tied to the land, not to the operator. So I think when the discussions are happening, we need to keep that in mind. What is going to stay there with the land, and what is going to be tied to the operator itself. And then another distinction is, how is the zoning portion potential to be amended versus how would a different chapter of the code that regulates the same type of operation citywide can be amended.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baring.
I have two questions.
Ms. Bagley?
I'll try to be quick, and it may be being late to the party. in the looking at what districts the STRs would be allowed, did you consider it all in this process of specific use permits for them?
Specific use permits for short-term rentals?
In the other residential districts?
Oh, in the
In
districts
single
that
family,
are,
did you consider that
okay,
at all?
okay, thank you. It's again, I think it's up to the body to discuss and consider that, and we would be happy to explore.
Okay, I understand that. I have one other question. If we were to go with what we've been presented with today, and their STRs are not allowed in these other districts, what would be the effective date, and how would compliance with an effective date of this ordinance, how would that work with all the people that are already out there having STRs?
The compliance effective date usually is the date when the ordinance is adopted, voted, approved by City Council. I would like Casey to fill in or correct me if I'm wrong. What I noticed in other cities is some of them included a grace period for the ones that are operating without a license or in a district where it's not allowed to terminate. But again, like we can discuss more, and Casey, please do correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct, Andrea. So yeah, typically the effective date is the date that council passes the ordinance, but yeah, it's not super uncommon to include a future date in that too. Say that maybe the ordinance takes effect 3 months after the day of the council action, 6 months, something like that, to allow staff to do some education and get people on board. So that's definitely something that could be taken into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagley. Any final questions before we move to our speakers? All right. Thank you all, and thank you for being judicious with your questions. We'll have plenty of time for more discussion. As we move to speakers, as a reminder, you will each have 1 minute. Please begin with your name and address. And again, for those appearing virtually, we will need to have your camera on. We would ask you to direct all comments to this body. And for those of us here in person, we would request that there be no displays or outbursts so that we're able to hear from everyone who's here today. Who will be running our virtual speakers? Well, is that going to be Mr. King or Mr. Poole?
Mr. King.
Good morning, Mr. King. Thank you. So our first speaker, I'm going to announce our first three, is Nicole McClelland, Vitaly Lunev, and Olive Talley. Ms. McClelland?
She's not on.
Do not. Is she online?
No, she is not.
Okay, and not present in the chamber. Vitaly Lunev? Not present in the chamber.
Not online.
Thank you. Ms. Talley will be followed by Linda Young and Tom Forsyth.
Thank you, Olive Talley, 6133 Prospect Avenue. As you listen to the speakers today, focus on the key issue. It is land use. Homes and hotels do not belong in the same zoning category. The Keep It Simple solution for zoning would still allow STRs to operate in Dallas, just not in residential zoning where lodging uses have never been allowed. And property owners would still be allowed to rent out their property and make money for 30 days or more, just like they do now. STRs are commercial for-profit businesses. The tax code defines a short-term rental as a hotel, requiring payment of a hotel tax. Listen when these operators describe their businesses and themselves as ambassadors for the city. They are catering to visitors using international booking platforms to fill their rooms for a few days at a time. They tout a May 21 staff report that declares minimal impact from STRs. That data is bad data, it is out of date, and has been debunked. It's a red herring to avoid discussing land use. And removing
Talley, that's
thousands
your
of
time.
housing units for long-term renters is a major impact.
Thank you for being with us today. Linda Young, Tom Forsyth, and then Lisa Severs.
Hello, my name is Linda Young. I live at 1632 Rio Vista. Please keep STRs in residential neighborhoods. Since 2017, I've been a 5-star superhost with over 300 5-star reviews and am registered with Muni Revs and am in compliance with rules already in place, and I pay hot taxes. I'd like to call to your attention, last May, the city manager's office conducted a data-driven review of the issues raised by opponents of STRs. Their findings indicate there are limited impact by STRs on noise and nuisance complaints. Nuisance complaints are the outliers, and the impact on housing availability is minuscule relative to total available housing and at less than 0.4% of total residents in Dallas being STRs. Hosting provides the ability to leverage my largest asset for supplemental income, and this income stream provides peace of mind that I'll be able to continue to cover my property tax obligations and keep the property updated, repaired, and nicely landscaped. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Tom Forsyth, followed by Lisa Severs, and then John Goodman.
Thank you. My name is Tom Forsyth. I live at 2115 Siesta Drive. The testimony of the SDR owners confirmed that they are operating businesses in our neighborhoods. Last week, there were 31 SDR owners that you heard from, and they own a collective 215 SDRs. That's 7 SDRs per owner. Their business caters to transients. It is a lodging use, and our current zoning code does not allow for lodging use in residential districts. Allowing SDRs to continue to operate in these districts is a betrayal of property owners who bought their homes to live peaceably with neighbors and not to live in discord with strangers. 3 leading data sources tell you that there are 6,000 SDRs in Dallas. They wreak havoc in our neighborhoods. They cause harm to our residents. They place a tremendous burden on the code and police departments who are not able to contain them. And the taxes that only 20% of them pay goes to tourism and not for enforcement.
Mr. Forsyth, that's your time. Thank you for being with us today. Lisa Severs, good morning. And that'll be followed by John Goodman and Greg Estelle.
Good morning. I'm Lisa Severs. I live at 8238 Barbary, and I own and operate 2 short-term rentals. A study done by the City of Dallas staff at the request of the City Council, May 2021, states that over 90% of all STRs have 0 311 or 911 calls. That STRs currently have a limited measurable impact on neighboring communities and no evidence of a citywide impact. Finally, less than 1%, 0.42% of the city's total residences are STRs. These are direct quotes from the City Council requested city staff report. Okay? Hold on. What we have before us today is a nuisance problem for which no zoning directive is required to correct. The City Council already has a solid ordinance proposal with enforcement teeth, including fines and a 3 strikes program funded by registration fees that would effectively eliminate the few bad operators. Why do we want to zone STRs out of existence when 90% of them are good operators? I would respectfully ask you to send this issue back to the City Council without any zoning directives and a firm directive to pass the ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Severs. John Goodman, followed by Greg Estelle and Emil Lippe.
John Goodman, 9153 Loma Vista, Dallas. Ladies and gentlemen, STRs don't belong in residential neighborhoods. The one thing nearly every neighborhood has is a school. And everyone's job is to make sure schools are safe havens and welcome places, not places of risk and danger. For safety's sake, strangers must be kept away, but STRs provide a revolving door of strangers, an endless supply. We've all watched in stark horror, and we've seen what happens when strangers do get in schools. 27 school shootings in the USA so far this year, and 4 of them have happened in Texas. Texas, more than any other state in the USA. Under KISS, STRs will still be allowed, but they won't be allowed in residential neighborhoods where they've always been disallowed anyway, for good reasons. The STR operators and owners already confirmed an STR is a commercial for-profit lodging use. KISS will conform those to existing state and local tax use categories, ordinances which have already
Mr.
defined
Goodman,
them as hotels.
That's your time. Thank you for being with us today. Greg Estel, Emil Lippe, followed by Angus Sanders.
Good morning, Greg Estelle, 411 Bonstone Drive. I live in Dallas. STR advocates know that a regulations-only scheme forecloses Dallas's ability to later enforce zoning. Texas courts are clear as it pertains to zoning and STRs. You use it or you lose it. Austin tried a regulations-only approach. Now they have 12,000 STRs, twice the number in Dallas, with only 16% registration compliance. Zoning is necessary because this industry has failed to regulate itself, while our nuisance regulations and lack of city resources have failed to solve issues. Without clear, proactive zoning that determines where in the city STRs may operate, regulating STRs is impossible. Multifamily neighborhoods must be treated the same as single-family neighborhoods for this newly defined lodging use as well. Please vote to approve the Keep It Simple solution following the consensus option of the Dallas City Council that the city staff requested, and move this to CPC today. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Emil Lippe, followed by Angus Sanders and Rob Thomas.
Emil Lippe, 6828 Gaston Avenue, where I've lived for nearly 40 years. Don't lose sight of the elephant in the room. Single-family residential zoning prohibits commercial or business. These are businesses. The LLC that owns our neighboring house has 6 properties. They're earning well over $1 million or $2 million per year in revenue. I ask you to keep track of how many neighbors of STRs speak in favor of them. How many neighbors want them next door? Ask the people that boast of being super hosts what their annual revenue is from this business. It's not a mom and pop situation. The Dallas Police Department is aided by Neighborhood Crime Watch programs. You can't have a Neighborhood Crime Watch program with an SDR in the neighborhood. We've had additional crime in our neighborhood in front of our house. And for those who want to say that noise is not a problem, you should have been at our house at 10 p.m. on July 4th
Thank you
and
for being
listened
with
to the
us today.
fireworks.
Angus Sanders, followed by Rob Thomas and Martha Heimberg.
Good morning. I'm Angie Sanders, 3432 Spruce Valley Lane. I'm a member of the President's Advisory Board of UT Southwestern Medical Center, the premier medical research facility in North Texas and in the top 25 in the United States of America. The administrators came to the board last month to plead for our help to meet their recruiting challenges. They are unable to recruit the staff and faculty, the worldwide scientific experts and physicians. They can recruit them, the salary is commensurate, but they can't find a place to live. Meanwhile, 6,000 available homes are relegated to use by a list of transient visitors who contribute nothing to the community. The owners of STRs said last meeting, that's okay if there's a housing shortage, just build more houses, ignoring the fact that these days it can take up to 2 years to build a house in Dallas, and revealing the callous disregard that says, well, that's all well and good, just don't mess with my money. This city is at the precipice. It can be pulled back or sent crashing over the cliff.
Ms. Sanders,
It's your decision. M&M says you've only got one shot.
Thank you for being with us today. Rob Thomas, followed by Martha Heimberg and Ashley Martson.
My name's Rob Thomas. I live at 1439 Sereno Drive. Let me tell you about the ultimate Texas experience located at 8334 Banquo Drive. Sleep 17, keg refrigerator, dartboards, big screen TV outside, heated pool, hot tub, cornhole, loud outdoor stereo, unvetted, undocumented, and unlimited strangers, not neighbors. Absentee antagonistic owner. Averages $748 a night. No recourse for bad behavior to the owner. All reward to the owner at the expense of the taxpayer. It's a commercial enterprise in its full definition. And based on my 2 years of living next door to that one specifically, it has no place in a residential neighborhood. Ask yourself, do you want the ultimate Texas experience located right next door to your house? Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Please hold all displays. We're here to hear from the public today. Thank you. Martha Heimberg, followed by Ashley Martson, then Danny Augustus.
Thank you. I'm Martha Heimberg. I live at 1523 Abrams, and I've lived in East Dallas for 50 years. Google me. I'm here to tell the committee to do your job. I watered our column parks this morning for an hour and came down here. Use those zoning tools that we've honed over the last 50 years to redeem our inner city neighborhoods, ghettoized by the last wave of absentee slumlords. We brought them back to vigorous, thriving, single-family, multifamily use with beautiful lawns where we meet our friends and neighbors. The fabric's fragile right now. 2 years of COVID restrictions, upswing, and political extremism pushing the divided house. Good time for the national Airbnb investors to grab up houses and fourplexes, our true affordable housing. Make some quick bucks. My duplex neighbor next door, Kendall, he's going to water my yard while I'm on vacation next week. He's a working member of my neighborhood association. That dude spending the night in the house behind me is not my neighbor, even if he's not throwing a brawling party. He's taking up the space of a person who could be my neighbor and help me.
That's your time, Ms. Heimberg.
He's feeding money to an absentee owner greedy to cash in on my community building.
Thank you for being with us today.
I say to
Thank
him,
you, Ms.
get a
Heimberg.
hotel room, buddy.
Thank you for being with us. Ashley Martson, followed by Danny Augustus and Justin Rubo.
Good morning, council members. My name is Ashley Martson. I reside at 5103 Pershing Street in District 14. I speak to you today from three perspectives, all of which support well-regulated STRs in single-family neighborhoods. I am a resident. I live next to 3 STRs. Never had an issue with any of them. I am a host. I operate a first-class rental 1 street away in my neighborhood, only 5 stars, 0 complaints. It is our pride and joy, and it allows us the time and the proximity to be involved in our neighborhood via the HOA, getting to know our wonderful neighbors directly. We also have ample security cameras that assist in neighborhood crime watch. We also happily host family of neighbors when they don't have enough space. Lastly, I'm also a real estate lawyer, and I empathize with the question being presented to the committee today, but zoning amendment is not the best answer. It's overly broad, it's overly restrictive. What we need are reasonable oversight, taxation, and robust enforcement. That is what will solve these party houses. That is what will answer
Ms. Martson, that's your time
for you today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Danny Augustus, Justin Rubo, followed by Carolyn Parrott.
Say Danny Augustus next.
Yes, sir.
Hello, I have 4 Airbnbs. I didn't, what's that? Danny Augustus, one of them, 6437 Lantos, Danny Augustus. Okay, I didn't prepare all kinds of BS anecdotal evidence. I'm gonna speak from the heart. I think Ronald Reagan said it best. The worst quote you can have, worst thing you can have is the government saying, I'm here to help. And I don't even know why we're in here discussing this. The rental laws have already been established, okay? we already can rent houses out, okay? And I don't understand why a lot of old white men don't want these Airbnbs. This is perfect example of xenophobia. For all you liberal council members out there, y'all should not be voting for any of this. All of this should be thrown out. Every Airbnb person that I've had are decent human beings. These are outliers.
Mr. Gates, that's your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Justin Rubel, followed by Carolyn Parrott and Catherine Eubank.
Good morning, Justin Rubel, 4812 Hollow Ridge Road. While I live in Buckner Terrace off of Hollow Ridge Road, my short-term rental is located near Love Field Airport in 75209. Many people, including myself, use our rental properties as STRs because we cannot receive enough rent from an unfurnished standard term rental rate to cover the monthly cost of owning our properties. Even with modest debt, the rent cannot cover the mortgage, insurance, maintenance, and rapidly rising property taxes. My 1,200 square foot STR property in 75209 zip code has an assessed $11,500 property tax in 2022, nearly $1,000 a month, and almost 275% higher than when I bought the property in 2017. So then sell my investment property, right? And put the money where? In the stock market that has dropped 30% in the past 6 months? Or in the crypto market that has dropped 60% in the last 6 months? Or a 30-year treasury bond bearing 3% interest? Or my savings account bearing 0.5% interest? Inflation is by conservative estimates 8.5%. None of these alternatives make sense. This is not China. This is the state of Texas, a very unique place in the world.
Thank you for being with us today. Carolyn Parrott. Carolyn Parrott. Not present. Is Ms. Parrott online?
Not online.
Next speaker, Karen Eubank, followed by Patrick Block.
Can y'all hear me? My name is Karen Eubank. I live at 627 Valencia, and I'm a journalist, and we have reported on this very balanced for a very long time. Short-term rentals have been around for 10 years, and it's only been in the past couple of years that we've seen a problem, and that was because of party houses. Last week, the platforms created a policy banning party houses. I suggest we give that a moment to take effect. They have listened to citizens who don't want party houses. I don't know a single host that wants a party house. The issue is you have a lot of short-term owners who are good operators who follow the rules. There are many businesses in each neighborhood after the pandemic, so saying it's a business in a neighborhood holds no water. Everyone's working from home. Businesses are from home all the time. There's people coming in out of our neighborhoods all the time that are quote unquote transients. We need a fair and equitable solution. This is not a zoning problem. This is a regulation problem. We have property rights in Texas. We need to adhere to those property rights. Every owner has the right to do with their back house or rent out a room in their house if they want to. Don't create unenforceable, unsustainable zoning laws.
Ms. Eubank, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Please hold all displays. Thank you. Patrick Block, followed by Erica McKim and Scott Lamberti.
Hi, my name is Patrick. I live at 5806 Victor Street in Dallas, Texas, in District 14. I rent out the guest room in the house that I've lived in since 1976. My mother bought this house in the 70s, and I inherited it when she passed away, and I plan on passing the house on to the next generation. As I said, I rent out the room in the guest room in my house. It helps me pay the property taxes. I'm friends with my neighbors. I pay my taxes. I'm registered. I don't have complaints on my property. I wish we could ask questions as to why homeowner-occupied STRs have to be lumped in together with investment properties. We are part of the neighborhood. My neighbor, who's lived in that house almost as long as I have, he's always chatting up my guests when they're coming or going. He hasn't had any problems. I had a guest, their car broke down last week. And I see him, he's out there helping fix their car. My neighbor is not upset with people coming and going from my house because.
Mr. Block, that's your time. Thank
right,
you
thank-
for being with us today. Erica McKim. Erica McKim is not present. Is Ms. McKim online?
Not online.
Thank you. Scott Lamberti, followed by Judy. We only have a first name. Mr. Lamberti.
My name is Scott Lamberty. I live at 503 Josephine Street. I previously served on the STR task force charged with making recommendations to the Dallas City Council. And the two things that I'd like to drill home here tonight is last week I spoke to two city council people's offices, District 13. They revealed that there are 2 party houses in their district. District 9, I spoke personally with Paula Blackman. She revealed there are 10 party houses in her district of over 100,000 people. This needs to be understood that the party house issue is a very small part of it. And the last thing I would say is that when a family of 5 comes to the city of Dallas, they are not going to rent 3 hotel rooms because the city wants them to. They are going to spend their travel dollars, their lodging, restaurant, and entertainment dollars somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Judy? Mr. King, do you have anyone online?
Nobody online named Judy.
Okay. Next speakers, Vernon Lewis, followed by Emma Araj and Apek Moulay. Vernon Lewis? Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Good morning. I'm Vernon Lewis, 8238 Barbary Boulevard in Dallas. I'm a retired teacher. The income from my 2 short-term rentals supplements my retirement and helps me pay my exorbitant property taxes. We've never had a problem with our guests. I have over 850 superior reviews. I'm a super host. We pay our hot taxes and we do not allow parties. We're respectful of our neighbors in our neighborhood. Many of our neighbors actually use our Airbnbs when they have their friends and family come to town. I'd like to remind everyone that we don't and have never needed a zoning solution to address short-term rental issues. What we do need is a good ordinance with teeth that sidelines the poor operators while allowing the good operators to continue to provide a valuable community service. I urge you to send this back to the city council without further action, instructing them to handle the few nuisance properties by enacting a good ordinance. Zoning short-term rentals out of existence is not a solution. It's an anti-business, anti-good sense solution. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, Mr. Lewis. Emma Araj, and that'll be followed by Apek Moulay and Sue Thu.
Hi, I live at 329 East Colorado Street.
And could you start with your name, please?
Yes, my name is Emma Araj at 329 East Colorado Street, and I have lived in Dallas now for about 3 months from out of state. During my first month in Dallas, I stayed in a short-term Airbnb rental so that I could have some time to get familiar with the area before signing a long-term lease on an apartment. My Airbnb rental was in Oak Cliff, and I quickly found that I liked the area. My host showed me around Dallas so that when I was ready to sign a lease, I knew my way around Dallas and I knew where I wanted to live. Now I live in Oak Cliff, I pay rent in Oak Cliff, and I buy gas and groceries in Oak Cliff. I'm also beginning to integrate myself into the community. A comfortable shift into Dallas would not have been possible for people like me if we didn't have the chance to explore Dallas in a short-term rental before finding permanent residence, without having to stay in a hotel and without having to find permanent housing right away before familiarizing ourselves with an area. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Apek Moulay? Not present. Is Mr. Moulay online?
Not online.
Okay. Next speaker, Sue Thu, followed by Vera Elkins and Scott Popescu. Sue Thu? Not present. Is Ms. Thu online?
Not online.
Vera Elkins?
I'm here.
I'm Vera Elkins. I live at 4840 Worth Street. I'm a registered SDR host per Chapter 27 of the Dallas Code. The proposed regulations and zoning would ban us. Is the city council members okay with eliminating so many jobs of their residents? Fair and sensible regulations would address these issues and allow good hosts to still operate. Per the city report, we do not affect our city and neighborhoods in a negative way. You all talk this bogus negativity, but where were you during the pandemic? Where were you during the winter storm when we opened up our homes to house people that needed homes? Is the city ready to take responsibility for all the lost jobs? That is the question for you. When you asked us to register, we did. We're registered, and now you want to ban us. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Scott Popescu, followed by Grady McGann and Ellen Beedling. Scott Popescu, not present. Is Mr. Popescu online?
Not online.
Okay. Grady McGann.
Yes. Hello, my name is Grady
Yes.
McGann. I live at 3218 Urban Avenue. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. The most recent of many I have taken to do so. And for years, we've been taking the opportunity to defend myself and other short-term rental operators, often in the face of an unwarranted personal attack. Just today, hearing us tied to school shootings by hosting dangerous transients, that's preposterous. So having already presented my defense, I'd just like to say this is a gray issue, not a black and white one. There are all sorts of hosts hosting in many different spaces for many different reasons. Just look at the diverse crowd who showed up for public comment today in support of STRs. In the beginning, the anti-folks seemed to recognize that and agree that a regulatory structure should be created that got rid of the irresponsible owners and ensured the collection of hot, not just throw the baby out with the bathwater. But over the past 2 years, well, we had task forces, studies, conversations, recommendations made by a vote of the majority, a nuanced approach. And as we went through that process, the anti-crowd has become increasingly hardline to the point of no compromise. You just keep moving the goalposts. And the only resolution they will now accept is the effective banishment of STRs in the city of Dallas. Strikes me as very
Mr. McGann,
disingenuous to spend 2 years participating
that's your time,
in
Mr. McGann.
negotiations.
Thank you for being with us. Ellen Beedling, followed by Marisol Tim.
My name is Ellen Beedling. I have lived in my home at 7538 Marquette Street for over 30 years. I am here to respectfully ask the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee to adopt the Keep It Simple solution to zone STRs out of our neighborhoods and move the issue forward to the CDC. I recently retired after 15 years in the residential mortgage business, so I speak with some authority. Every one of my clients was purchasing some version of their dream home, and none of them imagined they might one day be next door to a hotel. To allow STRs in residential neighborhoods is nothing but a complete betrayal of the 500,000 single-family homeowners like me who in good faith purchased our homes with the reasonable expectation that we would live in stable communities. Think about that word, community, a place where we can raise our children, enjoy our retirement. Take away the community and you take away the thing that instills a sense of empathy and social order. Good actors, bad actors, what difference does it make? STRs are hotels. Lodgers come, they use, they
Ms.
leave.
Beedling, that's your time. Thank you for being with us today. Marisol Tim. That'll be followed by Michael Van.
Good morning. My name is Marisol Tim. I'm at 814 Elsbeth Street in Oak Cliff. I'm the owner-operator of a short-term rental and a superhost on Airbnb. I've paid my hot taxes every month since I started hosting. I purchased a triplex that's over 100 years old and invested tens of thousands to renovate it from a rundown apartment to a beautiful and comfortable place for visitors to stay while in Dallas. This is my livelihood. I employ cleaners, handymen, landscapers, and other businesses in Dallas and often from the Oak Cliff community itself, all of which will lose a steady stream of income if you force short-term rentals out of a residential community in a time of inflation and pending recession. This is not a battle against big business, fat pocket investors, or Airbnb. It's a battle against your own neighbors and the small businesses that bring tax dollars to their communities. This is a serious issue that deserves a sensible solution, not an emotional one. I can't move my property in order to be in compliance with a zoning change. Take reasonable action, encourage responsible hosting, and punish bad actors. But pushing us out of the community benefits no one.
That's your time. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
with us today. Michael Van, followed by Robbie Clark and John Morrow.
Good morning, I'm Michael Van. I'm at 5524 Vickery Boulevard. We had a short-term rental that came into our property area a couple years ago. And, you know, coming to the M Streets, it was something that was, I'm not going to call it a dream, but it was somewhere where I wanted to invest some money. But I took ownership in that and I took residence in that community. Having someone in a short-term rental next door, that's not a neighbor. I agree with a lot of things that I've heard today on both sides of the fence. But when you're faced with it, when you're the one who lives next door, when you're the one that has to, you know, constantly reach out to the property manager who, in our case, is responsive. And, you know, she does reach out and reply back. But having to do that in your residence or having something like Christmas or New Year's Eve or the 4th of July be ruined because you have people who are not invested in our community next door isn't a solution. It's not something that until you're faced with it, you really don't understand. The parking situations, people knocking on your door at 3:50 in the morning because they're intoxicated and they don't know what house they're supposed to be walking into. They walk into the house that they think they're supposed to be at, having cops coming out because there's fighting. This morning I walked outside and have the, you know, immense stench of weed permeating through my patio, my, you know,
Take your
driveway.
time. Thank you for being with
Committee.
us today. Robbie Clark, followed by John Morrow.
Hi, my name is Bobby Clark, and I am at 5534 Vickery Boulevard. I'm on the other side of the STR from Michael. My husband and I bought in Vickery Place because we wanted to live in a true neighborhood where people know and look out for each other, but that's not our experience because the house next door is a short-term rental owned by an LLC of a wealthy real estate investor from California, one of several properties he owns in our neighborhood. I could spend this entire hearing telling you all the ways that the steady stream of strangers next door are a nuisance, but that's not the issue. Hotels are prohibited in residential areas, whether or not they're a nuisance. The city already treats STRs like hotels in all other ways. We need to make that clear in zoning as well. Failing to act on zoning is allowing a commercial use in residential neighborhoods and placing residents like me and my husband in a permanent situation of policing the activities next door. That's constant stress, and it's not fair to residents. Please protect Dallas residents and follow the lead of cities like Fort Worth and Arlington, whose zoning first approach has been upheld in the court. Support the Keep It Simple solution and clarify that STRs are the same commercial use as hotels because that's exactly what they are.
Thank you. Please hold displays. John Morrow, followed by Andrew Wilkins, then Jennifer Wester. Yes, sir. Thank you for being with us.
Good. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's John Morrow, and I reside at 8522 Stableman Drive in Dallas, District 10. I'm here to speak briefly against short-term rentals. Short-term rentals are a lodging business. They're a hotel business. They're a commercial business. They're not competitive residential land use, and the short-term rental people here today seem to confirm that. Short-term rentals do not take mail associated with other activities of residency. They bring a steady stream of strangers into our neighborhood. They're without question commercial enterprises residing in residential zones where lodging is excluded as a land use. Regarding noisy neighbors, much less transient short-term rentals, the Dallas Police does not have the resources to address these problems, and I can attest to that personally. In addition, hotel taxes can only be used for tourist-related expenses. They have, so taxpayers like me have to foot the bill for short-term enforcement codes. As a long-term homeowner in Dallas for 45 years, I say no to rotating strangers as short-term rentals. Please adopt and keep the simple solution proposal that would define short-term rentals as
That's
lodging.
your time, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you, the City
Thank
of
you for
Dallas.
being with us. Andrew Wilkins, followed by Jennifer Wester, and then Marquez Branson. Andrew Wilkins, not present. Is Mr. Wilkins online?
Not online.
Jennifer Wester? Jennifer Wester not present. Is Miss Wester online?
Not online.
Marquez Branson. Not present. Is Miss Branson online?
Not online.
Tyler Drake, followed by Jessica Black. Yes, Mr. Drake. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Tyler Drake, 1926 North Floyd Road in Richardson. And I speak to you as a former short-term rental operator in a house that I owned out in Portland, Oregon. And as a new resident here in Texas, the opportunities to create income are very small. We have a lot of uphill battles that are happening that I feel. I look around and it's mostly people that are older than me. There's an up and coming generation. We need opportunities, and this is technology that's allowing us to connect and actually share. People that operate effective businesses, they care about their community because all we have is relationship, right? I hear everybody's perspectives here, but I look around and like, are we going to hit 30% unemployment again? It's scary. Like, we need opportunities to be responsible hosts, and regulations are the approach that I believe is most effective. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Jessica Black, followed by Cindy Hellstern.
I'm Jessica Black from Arlington, Texas, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Texas Neighborhood Coalition. According to tourism policing expert Dr. Peter Tarlow, travelers are likely to behave out of character due to the excitement and anonymity of being somewhere unconnected to their daily lives. They tend to lower their inhibitions and are more willing to engage in rude, semi-legal, or even illegal activities they would not engage in at home. Prior to the rise of Airbnb, most tourism was clustered in and around entertainment and hotel districts. When STRs operate in residential zones, the buffer between tourists who want to have fun and residents who just want to live in peace is obliterated. This leads to the inevitable conflict between residents and STRs you're seeing in Dallas. You can't solve a problem involving incompatible land uses with nuisance laws. Simply put, tourists will always behave like tourists. The correct and most efficient tool to use is zoning. Zoning serves to separate incompatible land uses, protect the peaceful enjoyment of properties, and provide for the orderly development of the city. That is why I urge you to support the KISS solution.
Thank you for being with us. Cindy Hellstern, followed by Anthony Acosta.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Cindy Hellstern, 10827 Crooked Creek Drive. I come to you this morning to support the KISS solution. Zoning is required because lodging is a land use. I live in a neighborhood where I have been the victim of severe abuse, and all my neighbors have, of a residence that was bought by a group of investors from New York. They have diminished that property to the point that they are now selling the property and cannot sell it. It is diminishing all the quality of our life. I'm very active in my neighborhood association and with the police support that we have. Dallas City Code and police cannot handle these short-term rental property problems and short-term rentals. It must be handled through zoning. When you listen across the nation, the number one thing that police say, and police say in Dallas, is get to know your neighbors, build a strong neighborhood, build a neighborhood coalition, keep your city safe.
Ms. Hellstern, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Anthony Acosta, followed by Joseph Griffith. Anthony Acosta, not present. Is Mr. Acosta online?
Not online.
Joseph Griffith, followed by Justin Rubel. I believe that's a duplicate.
Yes, it is.
Joseph Griffith, not present. Is Mr. Griffith online?
Not online.
Rosaline Costa, followed by John Tran. Good morning.
Hello, good morning. My name is Rosalind Costa. I live on Hollywood Heights by Lakewood. I've been living there.
May we have your address, and could you bring the microphone down just a little bit? Thank you.
My name is Rosalind Costa. I've been living in the Hollywood Heights by Lakewood, 814 Cordova Street. I've been a host for probably about 10 to 12 years. Well, I live in the house for about 12 years, so I've been hosting for about 8 years. I have a separate quarters and I have a main house. I was out of the country for a couple months and I rented a main house for a lovely older people, a lovely guest. They were 70 years old, 72. Somebody from Richardson, their daughter rented for them. And for the 2 months rental, I actually pay my whole taxes for the whole year. The taxes are really expensive. I am a single mom that lives there with a 2.5-year-old. So if I can rent the house or the separate quarters that I rent, I don't know if I can live in the neighborhood. The taxes are really high, and I protest every single year the taxes, and they lower $100 or $150. It's not much. So, and somebody said, get to know your neighborhood and all that. I do get to know my whole street knows that I do Airbnb, and everybody has my number, my current number, my WhatsApp number, my Facebook number, and they always can get a hold of me. If there's any party or anything in there, I will drive myself and I'll tell my neighbor or call somebody, but I haven't had that
That's your
episode
time.
happening.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Costa. John Tran, followed by Haley Tubb. John Tran, not present. Is Mr. Tran online?
Not online.
Haley Tubb, followed by Erica Cole.
Hi, good morning. Haley Tubb, 9242 Loma Vista Drive. By now, you've heard a lot of facts and figures about STRs, so I'll talk to you about a qualitative data point in my own neighborhood. I know that in the morning, I walk my dog on the opposite side of the street from a fellow neighbor's house because we know our dogs don't get along. And as responsible pet owners and respectful neighbors, we acknowledge our pets' differences by keeping them apart. I know that every day after school, my littlest neighbors whiz up and down the street on their scooters, going to each other's houses for a game of catch or to parade around in their princess dresses. So I know in the afternoons, I need to be extra cautious when driving my car down the street because you never know when a ball or a princess crown is going to roll out into it. This all may sound idyllic and safe, and that's because it is a small slice of reprieve in such a heavy world that's around us today. And it's few of the many reasons that I urge you to adopt the KISS proposal so transient visitors of STRs don't cause disruption to the tight-knit community we have, which is something that all committee and council members should strive to preserve here in Dallas. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. Erica Cole.
Hi, my name's Erica Cole at 9246 Forest Hills Boulevard. I live in District 9, and we know who has the SDRs, whether they're signing up or not. We have a lot of them. They're crawling into our neighborhood. I live in a really sweet street. The next door neighbor to the left is a veterinarian. The people to my right have 3 children. They put their toys and play toys and stuff in our yard, and we take care of them like they're our grandchildren. We had a lady across the street that had dementia. The whole neighborhood watched her. If one of my neighbors here and the neighbor here weren't there, I wouldn't feel safe. And somebody came into my backyard with a rifle over his shoulder, and I called the police, and then I called my husband, and they called the neighbors, and they came over with baseball bats that came and protected me. I think this is a community, it's a neighborhood, and that's why we need to keep commercial away from residential.
Thank you for being with us, Ms. Cole.
Thank you.
Victor Chen, followed by Alex Janovich. Victor Chen, not present. Is Mr. Chen online?
Not online.
Alex Janovich, not present. Is Mr. Janovich online?
Not online.
Kevy Hendricks, followed by Wes Ying. Kevy Hendricks, not present.
Not online.
Wes Ying, followed by Calvin Powell. Wes Ying, not present.
Not online.
Calvin Powell, followed by Martha Carlson. Mr. Powell is not present.
Not online.
Martha Carlson, not present.
Not online.
Our next speakers are Azar Tafiq, Jansu Malkowitsky, and I apologize, I don't think I got that last name correct. Mr. Tafiq?
Good morning.
morning.
Oh, my name is Azad Tawfiq. I have a property at 13750 Rolling Hills Lane, Dallas. I've been a Airbnb host for since 2015, and my experience and my neighbor's experience has been great. I want to bring out points. There have been generalization presented by some of our neighbors and citizens as well that, as every house is a party house, that's not the case. Do not lump all the hosts as, they are businesses. There are residents like me as well who are paying their taxes. In fact, I have been, and a lot of our citizens, fellow citizens are saying they have been victimized and harassed. I have been victimized and harassed by my neighbors just for hosting. There are no complaints, but every day I get these tickets from City of Dallas for hosting rooms. There is no nomination done yet, so you can see. And the list, you are doing short-term rental, even though my guests who are staying are more than 30 days. The reason being, my neighbors call 911 every other week, and then the city comes in and start putting tickets. So my point of saying this is, just putting zoning laws and someone has phobia that there is an Airbnb or short-term rental happening is not going to solve. You put enforcement of all the listings and regulations instead of putting a generalized solution. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Mr. Maleski, and again, my apologies, not present. Is he online? Mr. King?
Not online, ma'am.
Okay. Our next speakers are Brenda Smith, followed by Matthew Ropolo and Charles Duncan. Brenda Smith? Not present.
She's online here.
Hello.
Oh, Ms. Smith, good morning.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brenda Smith, and I'm 8808 Angora Street, registered superhost. I pay my HOT monthly, and I've had 0 complaints or calls, 700 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, kid-friendly house. This is not a zoning issue. People came out and talked about the success in Arlington and other cities. I just want you guys to see, this is what I pulled up in Arlington just now. So what's happening is, these are apartments, these are full residential homes in residential neighborhoods. So zoning there in Arlington is not working despite what they're saying. All it does is get rid of allow the bad apples to keep operating while killing the people that are doing it correctly. It will allow the bad guys to win while taking millions in HOT away from Dallas, ending jobs for countless cleaners, landscapers, etc. It will take thousands, and it will also take away thousands upon thousands from local businesses and actually damage our local economy. Instead, we need registration regulations where we can partner with Airbnb. Dallas can charge fees to registering homes to help create and pay for an STR
Ms.
code
Smith,
enforcement committee.
That's your time. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Matthew Ropolo, followed by Charles Duncan, followed by Tori Rowland.
Hello, this is Matthew Ropolo. I live at 815 Elspeth, and my issue is with a unit, or a house rather, that has 23 different listings.
Mr. Ropolo, we're not able to see you. Is your camera on?
It says audio only mode. I don't know how to change that.
You should have the option to switch on your camera when you are moved to a panelist. And unfortunately, we can't hear you if we're not able to see you.
Okay, well, sorry. I guess my phone's not compatible or whatever.
You are welcome to write to us. We receive all letters and can circulate them to all the members. And if you want to try to log back in, we can circle back to you if you like.
Okay, I'll try again. Thanks.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Charles Duncan. Charles Duncan not present. Is Mr. Duncan online?
Not online.
Tori Rowland, followed by Jim Alvarez. Tori Rowland not present.
Not online.
Jim Alvarez, followed by Ronald Nur. Jim Alvarez not present.
Not online.
Ronald Nur, followed by Christine Parker. Mr. good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your service and presence. My name is Ron Canair. I live at 7062 Oak Bluff Drive. My wife and I rent houses, a small number of houses, and 30 days plus is no problem for us. That's the way to make money, in our opinion. And yes, when we can manage it and God blesses us, it's a for-profit business in residential neighborhoods. But while we can afford to wait, some cannot. Some people are barely making ends meet in an increased tax environment with runaway inflation. And we need to find a way to accommodate these people who need this income. So please, be compassionate. Let's help our neighbors to make ends meet reasonably. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. And my apologies for not getting your name correct. Christine Parker, followed by Leslie Bills. Christine Parker, not present.
Not
So
online.
Ms. Parker, thank you. Leslie Bills, followed by Jeff Veazey. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Leslie Bills. I'm a host for property 5907 on Prospect. I've been hosting for 4 years. In the last 4 years, we have regulated our homes immensely. We have made our homes safer and a nicer place to be. We have cameras in the front and backyard. We have a noise-aware system. We limit guest counts and do not allow parties. This can be found in our listing. We remind the guests prior to accepting, and once again, it's found in the welcome book when they arrive. The key component for us has been to grow relationships with our neighbors. We pay hot taxes, we pay property taxes. Again, we have been doing this for 4 years. Now the city is catching up and leaving me with a chance to lose everything. Life isn't fair, but let's regulate this to make sense for all parties involved. Where do you stay when you go on vacation? I would bet that 75% of this room rents a house or a duplex or an apartment off of Airbnb or VRBO. Please let that soak in. Let's regulate this and make it fair for all parties involved. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Jeff Veazey, followed by Danielle Lindsay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Veazey. I live at 404 Bondstone Drive in Dallas, Texas. I've lived there for over 20 years, 25 years now, I guess. And we've been Airbnb hosts for about 5 years. We have a very quiet short-term rental. There's everybody's talking past each other here. We want to really focus on the fact that the owner occupied in the first two proposals that was being protected but regulated is really the way to go, because the owner occupied are clearly the people who aren't having the same problems that other people are having. And nobody wants a party house, nobody. And we have had 0 complaints in the 5 years we've been doing it. I handed out a little packet. I walked around the neighborhood yesterday and got my neighbors to talk about this with me. And they were all very willing, not all, very willing to sign. I have one neighbor here.
Mr. Veazey, that's your time.
Okay, please look at my map and note the check marks of how many people immediately around my short-term rental
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Danielle Lindsay, followed by Kim Tower. Danielle Lindsay, not present.
Not online.
Kim Tower, followed by Logan Hefflinger.
Okay.
Kim Tower.
Hi, yes. My name
Good
is
morning.
Kim Tower, and I live at 5122 Milam Street. I live next to a short-term rental, and the only thing I have to say is positive things. The woman who owns the rental is a major part of our community. When I have my son who lives abroad come, he can rent the unit and stay there. My grandchildren live out of state, It's a lovely thing to have. The things that I'm hearing, which I agree with people who do not like the idea of short-term rentals, are people coming from California and New York and buying up many properties and not being responsible. Maybe something could be implicated that you have to live in the state of Texas to operate a short-term rental in Texas. I think that might help a lot of people. It seems a lot of people.
Ms. Toward, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Logan Heflinger, followed by Matthew Martin.
Online.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was there earlier this morning, but I had to get home to my kids, so I wanted to address you in person. But thank you for taking the time to consider this. I think I am a short-term operator at 5301 Mockingbird Lane in Dallas, and I think the regulations put forth by the council are. I would love to see those take hold and take effect and see what the results are before we get into a zoning ruling, which I think is way too broad and way too regulatory. I've lived in Dallas my whole life, and I bought a home that I love because I want to be an ambassador for people visiting Dallas, for neighbors in the neighborhood, for a home that they need for their guests or when they have their own home issues, and that has been my experience so far. And I just want to continue that, so I support regulations rather than zoning rulings at this time. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being with us. Matthew Martin, followed by Robert Montana. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Matt Martin. I live at 4837 Thunder Road. I am also a owner operator of a short-term rental. I appreciate the magnitude of what we deal with in this. It is disappointing that it seems to be so heated, and I think that we can come to a consensus by regulating those that do operate. It is absolutely true what people say. There are absolutely bad operators in everything that we do, and we use city enforcement all the time to stop bad operators. That's what you do when you do moving violation. City officer enforces what the codes that are written. We register with Chapter 27, and we also are an ambassador to the City of Dallas. Every person that comes here, they meet with me, I talk to them, I tell them about our city, and 2 of them have determined that they would move here afterwards. So I'm sorry for the housing shortage that we're creating by talking to people about our city, but having them move here that are good people that actually know us and being a resource for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being with us. And if those online, if you can please check your mic, we're getting a little bit of feedback here. Next speaker, Robert Montana, followed by Andrew Schultz and Jay Kutcher. Mr. Montana? Not present? Is Mr. Montana online?
Don't see him online.
Andrew Schultz? Not present?
Not online.
Jay Kutcher, followed by Elaine Robertson. Jay Kutcher, not present?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we can see you. Good morning.
Good morning. 6257 Palo Pinto, Dallas. I've been a member of East Dallas for 20 years since I moved here after college. I do not own or run an SDR, but I do support them. I'm surprised that no one has pointed out the irony that many opponents of SDRs actually live in East Dallas and Oak Cliff, which were built with a strong influence from SDRs. Have you noticed how many houses in these neighborhoods have 2 front doors? The second door was to provide access to a room for rent, mostly for returning soldiers from World War II. But those rooms for rent were, in short, STRs. These neighborhoods were built specifically to be STR neighborhoods. The opponents claim they love the quaintness and the architecture of the neighborhoods, yet they want to ban one of the main reasons their houses were built to look like they do. It's not STRs wanting to change the personality of the neighborhoods, it's these McMansion opponents want to ban them. I find it ironic that people move to inner city neighborhoods, yet want to change the exact reason these neighborhoods were built. Maybe next we can outlaw craftsman houses and require all new houses to be 5,000 square feet.
Mr. Kutcher, that's your time.
Right.
Thank you for being with us today. Elaine Robertson, followed by Brenda Gomez and Donna Hurley. Elaine Robertson? Not present. Is Ms. Robertson online?
Give me one moment.
Ms. Gomez?
Hi, I'm
Okay.
here.
If you want to go ahead, we'll come back to Ms. Robertson if she's online. Ms. Gomez, if you could start with your name and address.
Absolutely. My name is Brenda Gomez, 2927 Astor Street. Thank you for being here today and hearing both sides of the issue. My husband and I are both teachers, and we have one property to supplement our income, and we use it as a short-term rental. We have hosted families that are here on vacation, spending money at our local shops in Bishop Arts. We have had workers that come in for city conventions. We've hosted nurses. Never once have we had a noise, trash, or parking complaint. We have registered like the city has asked. We pay our hot taxes every month. And we are just wondering what we would do if short-term rentals were to be zoned out, because we use this to supplement our income and to pay for our daughter's pre-K school. Short-term rentals are not a zoning issue, it's an ordinance issue, and I just want to make sure that we're all working together to make sure that systems are put into place where we can regulate those bad hosts and that they are being held responsible. I just ask that you please do not infringe on the rights of property owners. We should not be told who we can or can't rent to and for
Ms.
how long
Gomez,
we can.
that's your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us. Mr. King, were you able to locate Ms. Robertson?
She was not online, sorry.
No, thank you for confirming. We're going to have our last few speakers as we look ahead to our adjournment time. Donna Hurley, followed by Matthew Curtis.
Hello, I'm at 432 West 9th. It's a duplex in Bishop Arts.
Would you start with your name, please?
Donna Hurley.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm very concerned that these zoning provisions could prevent me from supplementing income through short-term rental. My duplex has increased to over $9,000 in property taxes in the last 3 years because of development of condos and things like that. And we're being taxed proportionate to what those condos are worth. And so it's difficult to maintain the property. I'm going to be forced out. There is a party house in my neighborhood, but it is not owned by a short-term rental owner. It's been there since I moved in 4 years ago. They party 4 nights a week. It's loud. It shakes our houses, and nothing's been done about it. And the police are called because I live in Bishop Arts, and twice drunks have driven up into my yard, and somebody decided to hang outside and shoot at the houses with a pellet gun. But none of that was vacation renters. That was partiers down in Bishop Arts that caused the police to be called. I want
Ms. Hurley,
restrictions.
that's your time. Thank you for being with us today. Matthew Curtis.
Hi, my name is Matt Curtis. I'm actually here from Austin, Texas. My address is 3810 Medical Parkway in Austin. I've actually been consulting on this issue, working on this issue and consulting for the last 6 years now, working on this issue for 12 years. In my consultancy, we work on doing housing studies, economic impact studies, and cost of compliance studies. And one of the things I want to talk about real quick is the unintended consequences big cities seem to input into the regulations in their zoning when they're really focused on single-family zone issues. And that is accidentally banning or seriously restricting corporate apartments or flex apartments. So by applying what was meant to be rules and zoning to single family, to mixed use multifamily commercial CBD zone properties, which have 24-hour concierge, which are catering to a business traveler. It turns out accidentally, when we look at so many cities across the US, they're saying, hey, accidentally, we did not mean to ban traditional corporate or flex apartments that are really targeting that business traveler. So as you go through this, make sure to understand all those different models and what you might accidentally be impacting. And then, of course, impacting all the businesses and medical institutions that they
That's your
work
time,
with.
Mr. Curtis.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. So we did not get through all of our speakers, and I apologize for those who are here we were not able to hear from. We are going to carry forward those speakers to our next meeting, as we stated, and thank everyone for being here with us today. Members. Okay. We've not had a significant time for discussion, and I think as we look ahead to how we do our work, I would like for us to consider at our next meeting as a working meeting for the committee that would be questions to staff with no public input. However, there would be no action taken by the committee. If that is something the group would like to consider, if we can include that in our motion, so it would be posted in the agenda so that all both us and the public would understand how we were intending to proceed. With that, is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Is there a second? Mr. McGregor.
I'll second it.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Mr. Hall, a second by Mr. McGregor to hold this matter under advisement. What I suggest for our first meeting in August. Okay. And we'll hold the short-term rental DCA 212 under advisement to our first meeting in August as a briefing only with no action by the committee. Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, question about why the first meeting in August. Could we have perhaps a special meeting at the end of the month?
We are, so our next meeting is July the 21st. We have one matter under advisement that will be at that meeting. And so to not cause confusion on action versus not. Perfect. We wanted to recommend the next following meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or further discussion?
What would be the approximate date of that August meeting?
Well, that is going to be our other business item, is that at our July 21st meeting, we would like the body to consider our calendar. I think we're all recognizing that we are needing additional time for our considerations. And so we were going to ask, that was my next agenda item, to ask staff to bring back consideration of our calendar at our July 21st meeting so that we could determine that.
Okay, I may or may not be able to make that meeting in August. If I don't, I'll look forward to the date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bagley. Any other questions or discussion on the matter? Ms. Popkin, Commissioner Popkin.
I'm hoping we could talk with staff a little bit more at this next meeting about the potential of using the SUP designation for this. That was part of our discussion today, and I'd like to ask staff to follow up with more details on that.
Staff is making a note, and I would encourage all members and commissioners to reach out to staff before our next meeting so that we can have those types of questions answered. So if there's, thank you, Commissioner Popkin. If there's no further questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. So the motion carries. So this will come back to our first meeting in August as a briefing only meeting. So our last item was to consider for our next agenda having consideration of our calendar on our July 21st meeting. If that's acceptable to the body, that will just be posted on our agenda. I believe that will conclude. We adopted our minutes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner McGregor, Mr. McGregor, Commissioner Blair for your second. It is 10:26 a.m. Thank you to staff, all the members, and the public for being with us today. We're adjourned.